The streets of London were empty this morning as the RAF Red Arrows flew over them. In different times, crowds would have assembled to look up on this VE Day tribute. Instead, barely a soul was watching in Trafalgar Square. And nor was the Queen looking up from Buckingham Palace. She remains in Windsor, from where she broadcast a message to the nation tonight on this extraordinary anniversary taking place in these extraordinary times.
The war had been a total war. It had affected everyone, and no one was immune from its impact. But we kept faith that the cause was right. And this belief, as my father noted in his broadcast, carried us through.
She spoke at 9 p.m. tonight, the same hour as her father King George VI did on the 8th of May 1945, when he gave a radio address to a weary but jubilant nation.
Germany, the enemy who drove all Europe into war, has been finally overcome.
The Queen was in the army during the war, in the Auxiliary Territorial Service, and the cap she wore more than 7 decades ago was on the table in front of her as she spoke.
Never give up, never despair. That was the message of VE Day. I vividly remember the jubilant scenes my sister and I witnessed with our parents and Winston Churchill from the balcony of Buckingham Palace.
And she would later slip into these crowds to celebrate into the night that Nazi Germany had been defeated. Today, it was her son, the Prince of Wales, who led a nationwide 2-minute silence. Prince Charles and Camilla laid a wreath at the War Memorial in Balmoral on the estate in Scotland where they are spending the lockdown. The 2 minutes pause was also marked in Edinburgh, in Belfast, Cardiff and in many other cities. This was Preston at 11 a.m. and this the Prime Minister in Downing Street. Before coronavirus invaded the UK, the original plans to mark VE Day involved the Queen going to Westminster Abbey, a parade by veterans down the Mall, and a flypast for the crowds who'd gathered outside Buckingham Palace, the focus of the national commemorations. Instead, it all feels very different here today. No veterans or crowds to mark VE Day, just a few cyclists making the most of London's quiet lockdown streets. But that, said the Queen, was a sign of strength in itself.
But our streets are not empty. They are filled with the love and the care that we have for each other. And when I look at our country today and see what we are willing to do to protect and support one another, I say with pride that we are still a nation those brave soldiers, sailors and airmen would recognise and admire.
And that nation the Queen spoke of might have seemed quiet today, but it was in order to defeat a different kind of enemy. Chris Ship, ITV News, Buckingham Palace.